right, I've got 6:30.
Okay, I'm going to call to order the meeting of the Plan Commission on July 1st, 2021 at 6:30. Call to order, please.
Roll call.
Chairman Osterman is absent and excused. Supervisor Plotecker,
Here.
Commissioner Nelson,
Here.
Commissioner Meyer,
Here.
Commissioner Everly,
Here.
Building Inspector Olhafen,
Here.
Commissioner Mouche,
Here.
Planner Rachel Holloway. We've got Attorney John Macy, Administrator Nicholas,
Here.
and Clerk Capazza to record the minutes.
Okay, next is citizen comments. Is there anyone here who wishes to comment on anything on the agenda tonight? Sherry, do you want to state your name and address when you? Oh, hang on, don't share yet.
Hi, I'm Sherry Howard, North 73, West 25201 Howard Lane. And I just have a few comments with the item on the agenda tonight regarding the Parade of Homes with the Hillside Ridge subdivision. According to the application, the Parade of Homes will run for over 3 weeks. And the application states it has a history of more than 1,000 visitors per day. The residents of Howard Lane have concerns with safety during this time period, especially with those who regularly walk and bike on Howard Lane if there is substantial increased traffic. While I appreciate there will be signage directing people to the subdivision for the Parade of Homes, people are more apt to follow Google Maps instead and will use Howard Lane instead of Good Hope to get between Highway 164 and Hillside. We've already experienced substantial truck traffic on Howard Lane due to the development and since construction started on Hillside Ridge. And it's even posted as weight restricted and the trucks still use Howard Lane. A few of the drivers that I did encounter when I was out walking commented that the map showed the road went through, so they used it regardless of the fact that there were bright orange flags highlighting the signs that have the weight restrictions on them. In addition, the town's code section 42.15 specifically prohibits heavy traffic on Howard Lane. In regard to that, I request that Howard Lane be closed with signage at each end of the road indicating road closed to local traffic only, and ask that the signage be placed a day or two before the event and be kept there the entire time of the event through September 6th. So I appreciate your consideration of us 12 residences on our small road that can't handle that kind of traffic. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Sherry. Is there anyone else who wishes to speak? Elisa, is there anyone on Zoom?
There is no one on Zoom.
Oh, okay. Okay, then we'll move to the next item, and that is the minutes. Discussion and necessary action on the following minutes. June 10th, 2021, public hearing and plan commission.
Commissioner Mouche did email me shortly after the packets were distributed, noting that there was a typo in the header. The header notes that the page numbers are for town board minutes. I have since corrected that error and changed it to plan commission minutes, so I ask for approval as amended.
Okay. All right. Could we have a motion on accepting the minutes, approving the minutes, rather? Okay, do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, is there any discussion?
I have a question. Are we doing both minutes at the same time for the public hearing and for the plan commission?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, all in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Okay, motion carries 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6-0. Okay, next is new business. Discussion and necessary action on the request by Metropolitan Builders Association on behalf of Newman Development, Inc. and Hillside Ridge for a temporary site plan and plan of operation for the Hillside Ridge Parade of Homes event from August 13, 2021 through September 6, 2021. Is there anyone here from there? Okay. Yeah, do you want to come up and give us your name and address, I guess?
So I am Toby Van Sistine, I'm the Director of Operations for the Metropolitan Builders Association.
Can you do it on the microphone, please, so anyone participating can hear?
Absolutely, is an honor.
Just flip the switch over and
Try that again.
please.
All right, my name is Toby Van Sistine. I'm the Director of Operations for the Metropolitan Builders Association. We are located at 2120 Pewaukee Road, Suite 103 in Waukesha. I also have Pam Lonis, she's with me tonight. She heads up our event staff for this event.
Okay. Rachel, what do you have for us on this?
We have, this is presented to the Plan Commission as has been done in the past. It's past practice for Lisbon to process these as temporary site plans, plans of operation for Parade of Homes events. And that way we get the information from the applicant on the duration of their event, their hours of operation, parking considerations, where the event would be held, which lots would be involved. It also covers information, and you can see this in the application materials as well as the staff memo, as far as outdoor storage. None is proposed. The event would be running from August 14th to September 6th of this year. And hours are proposed, August 13th, excuse me. That would be Friday. That's a preview night for the association and their guests. Then open to the public August 14th through September 6th. The hours would be weekdays 4 p.m. to 8 p.m. and weekends and Labor Day 11 a.m. to 5 p.m. That's the time period that they're requesting. They would have a few employees on site as well as a handful of volunteers, 5 to 10 volunteers. Parking is proposed within some of the lots that have been platted within the subdivision. And they've indicated that if there's overflow or the event of rain, that some parking would be done within the streets inside the subdivision. But my understanding is not outside of the subdivision. On-street parking is not proposed outside of it. Excuse me. They will provide trash and recycling containers. Those would be located throughout the event, and that's provided on the maps and forms in the application, as well as portable toilets and a wash station. And included in the staff memo are some potential conditions of approval if you wish to act on this tonight and approve it. These were taken from past Parade of Homes events as well.
Okay, does anybody have any questions for Rachel or for Toby?
Toby, correct?
Correct.
Good evening. You heard the concern of one of the citizens. Obviously, these are, this isn't the first time you've done a Parade of Homes. They're usually cut and dry events, so to speak, because they've been fine-tuned. And of course, their script, and usually, and most of us, I assume that are in this room, have been to a Parade of Homes.
Sure.
So everything is down to a fine point. Question was raised about traffic on Howard Lane. Your estimate is 1,000 cars. It could be, depending on the weather, it could be 500, it could be 1,000. So would you have any objection to Howard Lane being closed to traffic during the Parade of Homes, which means you'd be using Good Hope or Hillside?
So right now our plan is, and we completely understand the concerns that Mrs. Howard has. And we definitely want to make sure that everybody's safe, understand that, that this event is meant to highlight the community. We've appreciated that Lisbon has been participating in this for a number of years. Sneak preview, we might be coming back for next year too, but we'll see. We've loved having the event. You've been a great community to work with. And we'd have no objections to working with, with you if we had to do some signage that was a temporary closed kind of a thing for Howard Lane. We could certainly work that out. Right now, our plan is all cars will be directed to Good Hope. We would prefer they don't use Plainview just because of coming through the community. That seems to be the least impactful for the neighboring homes that are around. That 1,000 number that we use, that's on a really, really good day. This year coming out of a post-COVID, and I'm going to say post with a hope that we're past all that and that people do want to come out and participate. 1,000 would be a very good day for us. Typically, we'd be looking at anywhere from 200 to 300 on a weeknight, maybe 400 if it's, really nice and people want to come out. But the weekends are where we would see the influx on Saturdays and Sundays.
I would personally, having driven, and most of us, I assume in this room, have driven in that area many times. Good Hope, to get onto 164, Good Hope is a light.
Yep.
Okay, and then to get on, to get to to Hillside, there's a four-way near one of our, well, actually our town garage. That's a good entrance and exit point. If more people would be coming in to the next road to the north, you do not want to pull out onto 164, especially if it's during rush hour. So,
Wholeheartedly agreed. And that is, all of our signage, we have a plan book that has maps on it. Our website and tickets went live today. And all of that information in obviously assuming everything goes well tonight, we are directing everybody to Good Hope. That seems to be it for us too, to let somebody that doesn't live in this area get there. That's really obvious. You can blow past Plainview, you could move past Howard, and you wouldn't even know they were there. So we want to make sure that people can get in, get safe, not try and turn around or pull into a driveway on 164. That doesn't work for anybody. So
okay.
everything that we're doing is telling people Good Hope is the way to go.
Okay, and just in quick review, I believe there's 8 or 10 homes that are being shown. They're obviously in the Hillside on the newer Newman subdivision. They're very close to the entrance. It seems to be, they seem to be on the south side of the road that goes into the subdivision.
Correct.
And the parking would be across from that, correct? And there's must be an open area in there, a field.
Yep. So when you actually drive in right now, there are a couple of homes that are under construction. Should be a map in your packets that will show.
There was.
There's 2 homes on the north side of the road, and there's maybe 3 or 4 lots between them. That's where our parking will be. So you'll actually get parking first, and then the houses are after that. On the south side, there's a retention basin, and it's the 6 lots directly after that, all on the south side across from the little park area that they have.
Okay, and I assume as you do per normal in the parade of homes, people will be walking obviously on the main road and going to the various homes that they choose to go to.
Correct. And
Okay.
we would barricade where cars will have access to come in and out. We do have parking staff that will be out there to keep people from hopefully bumping into one another, but get the people out to the roadways where they'll be behind barricades so that we won't mix people in cars.
Mhm. Okay. I don't know how the rest of the commission feels, but on the traffic issue, but thank you for answering my questions. No further questions, Madam Chairman.
Okay, anyone else? Joel?
I've got a couple of things I'm concerned about, but a couple of questions for you. I was in there this weekend driving down Beverly Lane. On those lots where it's indicated to park, there's a fence across there on those lots. Is that as far back? I don't know if that's a demarcation for a wetland or something. I'm just concerned whether or not there's enough parking on those lots. I know you guys have done this a zillion times and you know what you're doing, but that's the first concern. I drove down Beverly Lane, looked on the north side. It didn't look like there was much room for parking. And I'm concerned about that filling up right away. And all of a sudden we've got cars all the way down Beverly Lane and there's no cul-de-sac to turn around in. They're going to have to go down to the next cross street, do a T turnaround to head back the other way. That's one of the concerns I've got.
Sure. So what I can tell you is when we look at our event, most people can walk through. I mean, we do have some that will come and spend a considerable amount of time there.
Right.
Most people are kind of window shopping and they're kind of moving through. We figure about 10 to 15 minutes at most per home. So we're saying someone could show up, get on site, do the walkthrough and be gone with it about 1 hour and 20 minutes is about an average. So when we have 4 hour window, most people don't come by themselves. So in our calculation, kind of figuring out what we need,
Right.
We figure that there won't be more than 50 to 100 cars at any one time. The amount of square footage that we have in that space that Newman will, they'll actually be coming in about a week before the parade. They'll come cut all the grass and get everything ready and make sure it's prepped with their landscaper. We are very comfortable with it. And I know that's just me saying
Okay,
it, but
no, that's,
yeah, I mean,
you've done this before I haven't. I've been in enough parades, but you know what you're doing. Which gets me to the second
Commissioner
question.
Everly, can I do a follow-up very
Yes.
quickly? You've never allowed cars where people are walking.
And we don't, no.
So they can't drive down to the end of Beverly Lane.
Yeah.
Well, there's only way they can get out of that if they park on the street. I assume they're facing towards the west. If you're not going to allow people on the street, that's fine. That solves the issue.
I just wanted to say, I've never seen cars
No.
anywhere where people are walking.
The
Right.
closest we
Yeah.
ever had was where we had to share a road. It ended up being a one-way drive-through and we barricaded with steel barricades. We're not.
Because there's
anywhere
no
near
way
that
to
issue.
get out of that subdivision off of Beverly Lane.
No, but even with where we set up our barricades where cars will be able to get in and out of the parking lot, if somebody had to turn around, they'd be able to pull into the lot, pull down, because we don't do an in and out in the same place. Someone would be able to get in and turn around if they were
Okay.
on Beverly, so that wouldn't be an issue. And we will have, parking on grass isn't really great if somebody shows up in a motorcycle. That's hard, it's gonna end up in the dirt. We would have a small area that would be right by, as people are coming in and out off of Beverly before the barricade, where we could park a couple of motorcycles. I mean, we
Okay.
work that stuff out as we need to.
Okay, which gets me in my next question. I'm concerned, but you just mentioned that you're gonna have somebody come in there. I assume that they're gonna cut those vacant lots short enough that we don't end up with a hazard. I happened to experience once with somebody's catalytic converter starting a field on fire, and it's very ugly sight.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that,
Newman Development has been fantastic to work with as a
Okay.
developer for us. And they've done this for a number of years. Absolutely, they have their landscaper come through and keep that maintained and cut during the day, so we don't have any issues like that. So
Okay.
it's-
and the last thing I'm just want to make sure that you're going to have a lot of signage, at least what I've experienced when I've been at parades, just to make sure that there are the vision corners. Because people pulling out of Beverly Lane to get back onto Hillside, we need those signs back far enough so they can see the traffic coming.
Yeah, about the only thing that we would have right up in front, we have a feather flag that will be in that kind of little center island. Everything else will be back off the road so that it won't be an issue.
That's all I have, Madam Chairman.
Okay. Anybody else? Jeff, do you have anything?
Actually, I do. I'm worried about the parking also a little bit. The plan indicates lots 2 through 5 will be utilized for the parking. How much area is this covering, and how many cars can you park in there at one time?
So it's really difficult to answer that with on-site staff when we kind of come up with our plan of, we do parallel parking, typically not angled, and just making sure that as cars come in, how close you can get them without making them feel, we don't stripe the lot, so there's no way to indicate an exact number. It's hard to say it's going to be, say, 100. But what I can tell you is that because we do have staff out there that's watching as people are coming and going, the team that's out there is instructed to start at a certain point. Typically, it's the closest to where our trailer is. Work away from that, start a second line. By the time they get to the end of that second line, usually people start leaving and we start infilling. We look at, that the amount of square footage, I apologize, I don't have the exact number, but between those, that's 5 lots, I think we said, right?
2, 3, 4,
2,
5.
3, 4, 5. Oh, that's only 4.
Yeah.
But for the amount of space that's out there, we've done parades very similar in size, number of homes, and we've done it with less parking than what's out there this year.
Okay. The other question is, there will be, I assume, septic facilities built on these lots.
Correct.
What about ground compression? Will that be an issue with these cars parking in there?
So we bring that up every single year. We talk to the developer about it, and if they have any concerns about it, then they will instruct their landscaper where the beds are indicated, and they will go out and put orange fence around those areas to keep people off them. We will not park anywhere where it would jeopardize the ability to sell that lot or for somebody to safely have a home in the future.
Right.
So
Okay.
we would avoid that at all costs.
Okay, very good. Thank you. That's it.
Awesome. Mark, do you have anything?
No, as long as they're agreeable to the request from Howard Lane, I'm fine.
I'm going to comment on that. Legally, I think they have no say over that whatsoever. The Plan Commission can make a recommendation to the town board, but the town board would have to check with their engineers and their police and fire to make sure that it's a legitimate and appropriate thing to do. So I think the only thing the Plan Commission tonight could do would approve it subject to a recommendation to the town board. In all due respect. I don't want to take away your powers, but roads are really under the town board's jurisdiction and they have nothing to do with it. I mean, other than the town board could say, you're paying for the signs, but the engineers, it's not like they're directional signs. These are road closed signs and they have to be properly, Joe Eberly will correct me if I'm wrong, they have to be the proper legal signs, or if there's an accident, we have liability as a town. So the engineers and building inspector and police and fire would have to work with the DPW department to put up the proper legal signs, and all they do is get the bill for it. In all due respect.
Yeah,
But-
and if that is the case, whatever the process is, we are certainly willing to work with you guys, whatever it takes. We want to make sure that the community enjoys having it there as much as we do.
We made a note of it for the town board agenda.
And I can confirm just a quick measurement on the area. It's about 1,730 square feet based on those 4 lots.
Okay.
Ma'am.
Brian, you have anything? Oh, Joe, you have something else?
Go ahead, Brian, if you had it.
Historically, usually, I think in Twin Pine Farms, the last parade that we had, I think you had 2 lots in there that were reserved for parking. And granted, there were less homes, but I don't think there was any problem with parking because the whole issue is no cars can park on the road. It's all for a walk traffic. There's nobody that goes, not even a golf cart goes through there that I'm aware of. So I'm not worried about that. As far as the road close, I think you guys worked with the DPW because there was a certain part that didn't, of Twin Pine Farms, I think it was phase 1, that didn't want to have any traffic because there's 2 entrances and there's 1 in and 1 out, 2-way traffic. So I guess if the board needs to approve it, I don't remember what they did last time, but if the board needs to approve the signage and everything, I think you worked with our DPW that time.
Yeah.
And I don't know if they loaned you the signs or whatever, but you guys were responsible for putting them up, taking them down. And I'm all for blocking off Howard Lane because I don't think that a sign that just says road closed is going to cut it because it's not working for the other ones. But an actual closure, if everybody is in agreement, fire department, life-saving for Howard Lane, the barricades are easy enough to move or actually plow over if they had to.
Sure.
But yeah, if the board has to approve that, I'm all for that. And I'm not worried about the way you conduct it. This is your 3rd one here in the town of Lisbon. I've been through all 3 of them and they've all been pretty much flawless, other than rain, but you don't control that, so.
No, Pam does.
Okay, Joe, did you have something else?
Nothing else.
Nothing else? Okay, anyone else have anything? Any comments? John, are you nothing now?
Nothing.
Okay, all right, then I'm looking for a motion on this.
Madam Chairman, I would move that the request by the Metropolitan Builders Association on behalf of Newman Developments, Inc. and Hillside Ridge for a temporary site plan and plan of operation for the Hillside Ridge Parade of Homes event scheduled from August 13th, 2021 through September 6th, 2021 be approved per, I'm sorry, hold on for a minute. With recommendations to board dealing with signage and closure of Howard Lane and planning operations.
Okay, motion was made by Ed. Do I have a second?
Before there's a
Oh.
second, are you including the recommendations of the planner on pages 3 and 4 of her report?
Yes,
The 14 recommendations.
yes.
Just wanted to make sure that was in there. Thank you.
I'll second.
Okay, second by Brian.
Do you
All in-
need us to read through the conditions, anybody? Has the petitioner seen the conditions? I just always like to make sure that.
Yes, and I
they're
appreciate-
accepted, they're acceptable to you, the 14 recommendations. Absolutely. Thank you. Sorry, I'm the new guy in town.
No, Attorney, last name, please. I'm sorry.
Macy.
Macy. Attorney Macy, thank you for that explanation. It's very thorough, and sometimes in the past, it was the opinions were a bit terse from our, if I may say, but always professional from our former attorney.
Okay, we've had a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Okay, passes 6-0. Okay,
Thank
thank
you.
you.
We could ask if there's any homes.
Okay,
under
next is
500,000, but-
unfinished business. This is discussion only regarding agricultural preservation zoning. Rachel, are you doing this?
Yes, I can get us started at least.
Okay.
Hope everybody came ready to play tonight.
It's good to see you off screen, Rachel.
Good to see you too.
Thank you.
Everybody. Nice to be seeing real people. So if you recall, you kind of kicked this off a little bit last month, but this is really meant to be the main discussion. Excuse me, there has been thank you, a request from the Bassey family. They own Bassey's Tasted Country up on County Highway Q in Richfield across the way. They've interested potentially expanding their current operation in Lisbon. Asked the town to look into creating a zoning district that would be, the intent would be really to help preserve large expanses of farmland, but also, excuse me, allow significant recreational components that really allows supplemental income for these, types of farms. If you're familiar with these, there's others throughout the state and the country certainly, but it's becoming increasingly popular. Different to offer certain things for families and public events to come onto farms, have other things for people to do. So it's not just your traditional farming activities, although that's the bulk of it. But there are other things that the farm operators could do, games, special events, other types of buildings potentially on site that would draw people in and allow other streams of revenue, other ways of sampling or purchasing farm-based products, whether that's food or drinks, really a whole range of ways to kind of engage with farms. This is a really interesting kind of realm to get into for zoning, but we tried to just outline some of the key issues in my mind that I think would be helpful to get your opinions on as a commission on, are you interested in doing this? The types of considerations that I think should be considered by any community that's wanting to enable this by zoning. How exactly do you want to do that? So some of the questions in the memo that kind of posed, I mean, again, the premise would be ag preservation from large tracts of land. Staff right now, we're, before we tackle really writing a zoning ordinance for this, if you want to go in that direction, that's what we're looking for tonight. That's the key question is, do you want to have an ordinance drafted to create a new zoning district? Because your current districts, as we discussed last month, your A10 district has a minimum size of 10 acres. And of course, there are many properties in the town that have that zoning, but that's really not quite, if an operation like this, wants to incorporate other types of things on the farm, traditional zoning doesn't quite speak to that. So it's not clear if it's prohibited or allowed. It's just a question of the zoning ordinance to really anticipate those things. So for that reason, we think a new zoning district would make the most sense. And just to help kind of frame this too, there aren't many places in the town that might be suitable for this. So when you think of large tracts, and say the threshold is 100 acres, and it could be different, it could be more or less, but that's just one number that I would start with for conversation's sake. We look at lands that are on your future land use map, excuse me, in your comprehensive plan. We'd really be talking about those areas that are in white. Those are your large agricultural areas and areas that are planned to be in agricultural, sort of rural type use, larger lots. Those are the types of areas that would be most suitable, but also because of the traffic that can be generated by these things, these sites during the peak times, it would make most sense to probably have them only allowed on county trunk highways or state trunk highways. And so when you look at your map, really there aren't many areas that would have that acreage and also have the access to these major roads. So just by looking at the map, and I've got that on the screen and it's also in your meeting packets, but we're really talking about the northwest corner of town up along County Highway Q and of course 164. There's a tract up there. I mean, it's I think more than 700 acres roughly contiguous. Of course, there's different owners, but that's one part of town where this could potentially go. A little further south, there's an area in white just south of the Bark River. I think that's just over 100 acres, although it depends what you would count in there, but in theory, that could be another area where this could go. Up in the northeast corner is the other one across from Bassey's operation currently. There's a tract there. It's well over 100 acres, kind of fits the bill as far as having a large expanse of ag land. The only other place in Lisbon that I see this kind of zoning district potentially landing on the map would be down to the south off of Lindale Road, County Highway JK. There's a couple of parcels there that are quite large, and I'm forgetting the exact acreage, but that's a little over 100 as well. So that in your kind of southwest corner of town, if you're just thinking of what would the potential implications be if you create a district like that, those are the places on the map that I could see this potentially fitting. And not knowing, anything else about the context of those sites, that's sort of the geography of it. That would be, excuse me, 1, 2, 3 in the north and one more in the south, so 4. 4 just places on the map within the town.
And let me just add one, I want to make 2 preliminary comments. One, I've been working on this project, the Bassies are here now for over a year in Richfield. Okay, so I have a lot of familiarity with the pros and cons of the zoning district versus conditional use versus permitted uses versus accessory uses. It's, Richfield is still working on it, and what's being proposed by your planner after consultation with the rest of the staff is that there would be a principal use, primary agricultural, a large tract of land. And the goal is, as your planner has indicated, is to preserve that land. So the first policy decision for you to think about, and we all know town board really sets policy, you're the planners, and they'll buy into your planning and make it the policy or not, that's the way it works, but is whether or not you think large tracts of land in the to-be village are something you want to have occur. You're going to be a village in all likelihood, and when you become a village, are you still going to want the large tracts of land? The staff has no position in that. We know what your land use plan says, but I think that's the first policy decision. Because if you don't want to preserve these large tracts of land because of potential, you would rather have them be ready for potential development, we shouldn't go down this path. I mean, you would say to most plan commissioners, do you want to preserve large tracts of land? And they would say, well, of course, but you're looking at a different future here. And so you have to think about this a little bit. So we'd like to put this into bite-sized pieces. And the first is just to get your thoughts on whether preserving it. And then the adjunct, of course, as your planner has indicated, is that in order to preserve it, you have to probably give them another source of income. And that's where the agribusiness or agritourism concept comes in. And the way we're envisioning proposing it to you, it's going to be your decision, is all the other uses to make money, that's what we're talking about, would be accessory uses, and they'd be subject to site plan and plan of operation approval. They'd be allowed as an accessory use, just like a garage is allowed, or other accessory uses are allowed, but then you wouldn't be holding public hearings and things. The conditional use concept has gone by the by because of what the legislature's done, and you all should know that. And so we can't, that was the easy tool. It would have been a simple solution to use conditional uses to deal with this issue, but it's not being proposed because of the change in the legislature. Now, I've covered a lot of things very quickly there, so I don't know if you have any questions, but the first question on the bite-sized pieces is, do you like the idea of 100-acre tracts being preserved and allowing those property owners some other uses to help preserve that land? So Madam Chair, maybe we can just go down the row and get comments from people.
Okay. Brian, do you have anything?
So they preserve let's say it's 100 acres.
We're using that, but they have a larger
I mean,
tract.
for math purposes. So it's 100 acres. And so they're going to preserve it by farming it.
Yeah, we're gonna,
Anything other
you're
than.
gonna give us a number. 70% is the number we threw out potentially. That has to have at least 70% of the land, right? We talked, Madam Planner, and that is traditional farming activities.
Okay, so
Now,
right
that
off,
would include pick your own strawberries, by the way, but
okay.
but those traditional farming activities, 70%.
So right off the bat, they can farm it, and right off the bat, they can harvest and sell products that they have gotten from the land. So the second,
They have to.
they have to.
That's
Then
a
this-
requirement.
Got it. So the second part of that is, now instead of farming and what we just talked about, I want to put up horse riding. That they'd have to come to the plan commission. Or I want to put up a pumpkin patch that fires pumpkins. They then have to come to the plan commission for that side use, so to speak. Am I
The way
hearing you
we're
correctly?
envisioning it, it would become without a public hearing, but it would come with a site plan and plan of operation.
But they
And let's
would-
take a real simple one, a
Okay.
restaurant,
Okay,
okay? You know, they want to have a restaurant. Many of these places, if you've gone to these around the country or around the state, they have a cafe or a place to eat. Elegant Farmer even has, you know, some place to eat. So restaurant, we envision would be one that you would consider whether you're going to allow that as a permitted accessory use, subject to a site plan and plan of operation approval by the planning commission. No public hearing.
And we can get into a little later, like other specific uses, but that's.
I wanted to use one as an example because when you get into the pumpkin thing and stuff, I personally am not going to be recommending we get that specific, that's going to be all under a heading of agritourism. I hate that word, but we're going to define extracurricular activities and define what's included. Because they're going to come in with a site plan and plan of operation. And my vision is the accessory uses are big picture. Restaurant, event venue, that's one you're very common, you know, many of these places want to be able to hold events. The zoo has events, you rent pavilions at the zoo, that's an event venue at the Milwaukee County Zoo that you can rent. Brewer Stadium, you can rent areas. They will want to have event venue, have it be an event venue, right? So those are the broad categories. One of the questions I was going to ask you later was, what do you envision as things that you would allow them to do to make money? And maybe I've circumvented that by throwing out event venue and restaurant already, but I certainly would, that was one of our questions later is, if you buy into the concept, if we don't buy into the concept, why should we go into the specifics about what you envision of how they can make money?
They
Does
can
that-
have the flavor of it.
Well, before I forget, let me ask you this question. Say they come in with a site plan or plan of operation for an accessory use that we don't want.
Well, first, it wouldn't be on your list if you don't want it.
So we have to define everything that we're going to allow them to do upfront.
Well, not everything you're going to allow them to do. That's the detail of the site plan and plan of operation, but the big picture items for sure.
The
Now,
goal would be to, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but describing the uses that are permitted within that district without trying to get too specific to make the ordinance, you know, unwieldy and hard to administer, but enough to give you the idea of these categories so that when someone comes before you with the site plan, plan of operation, if it fits the, you know, description of a restaurant or a gift shop or an event venue.
gift shop is a good one.
You know, things that kind of fit the bill, and I guess if it's not specified, you've dealt with a lot of things that your code doesn't necessarily have on the list, but I guess in that case, to some degree, they have discretion as
You
to whether
could,
it.
you could
know,
put
fits.
reasonable conditions on a site plan and plan of operation, understanding that by putting it on the list, they have the right to do it. The garage is a real typical example. That's an accessory use for almost every zoning district is a garage. But you still have to meet site and side yard and setback and material architectural requirements depending on what zoning district you're in, but you have the right to a garage. It's just what reasonable conditions have we placed on the size, location, height, and materials. So we can't, it's going to be very difficult to write this to handle every potential. I think there's going to be called an entertainment venue. There's going to be an event venue. But then there's going to be an entertainment venue, and that's where the pumpkin hurling and you're going to decide whether it has to be directly related to agricultural or not. A Ferris wheel or a merry-go-round.
So in general, I'm very much in favor of the concept, and I'm okay with defining this as we go. My worry is how we are able to control the future when a site plan or plan of operation is proposed and we think it impacts the neighbors too much. Whatever is in there, I don't want to try and box anything up, but some site plan or plan of operation comes to us and it's not containing something that we've specifically defined, can we say no? I mean, I don't want, you know, if we go down this road, the last thing I want is this 100 acres butts up against a subdivision. And now instead of tractors, you know, a couple times a year or you know, whatever it is, to do the farming, all of a sudden now we've got an everyday, all-day activity that's creating more noise than I would want in my neighbor's yard. How do we control that? That's the concern. In general, I think it's a great idea, but, you know, how do we make sure that we make it usable for them, but we can keep the neighbors that may end up being right next to this protected from a bunch of noise or some other activity, a lot of traffic that they didn't sign up for when they bought their house maybe decades ago.
And the only answer to that is put the planner and I and the administrator to work to put together a well-drafted ordinance that you're comfortable with, that it includes the tools that you need to safeguard the neighborhood.
I can tell you too, we would have to rely, you know, in thinking about that language and being careful to rely on the intent of the overall zoning ordinance, which is protecting your health, safety, welfare, things of that sort. We have to really keep that in mind and forefront. Try to get at those concerns, Mark.
So to make it simple, so if somebody buys a piece of property of X amount of acres, they can do X things without coming to the Plan Commission or getting approval. With parameters, they're allowed to do X amount of things, but anything outside of those things, they have to come to Plan Commission. Here's an example, you had brought up. So we allow 2 sheds on any one property. They have to equal so much square footage. If you want a 3rd shed, you got to come in and ask for it. You still have your parameters, you still have the guidelines, you're still allowed these things, but you got to come in and ask for your 3rd shed. So I know that's not the exact same thing, but it's somewhat similar. I'm trying to simplify it without being specific.
Yeah, and that's a great comment, because I assumed, and Rachel and I haven't talked about this, the only thing that's permitted is traditional farming.
Okay.
I wasn't even knowing for sure, we didn't talk about whether barns were even allowed. I guess I was thinking of cropping, you know, as being the traditional farming.
Sure.
These are large farms. We have not talked to any of the potential petitioners as to whether they would want the right under this zoning district to have livestock. We'd have to look at that. I was thinking that this was crop farming. 70% was crop farming, but that may be too narrow. We'll have to see. So I'm glad you raised that. I think we got to put that on the list. But the only thing we knew of when we talked about this was when I was saying traditional farming activity, I anticipated that was pretty much crop farming.
Okay.
And anything else, they'd have to get permission. But we could be broader than that. It's up to you. You're going to make that. But that's the concept. You jumped right in and you got the concept. This is what it's allowed. This is what you can do in this ag preservation district. All these other accessory uses are allowable with Plan Commission approval. But they don't have to go through the public hearing. This is the difference between the conditional use or a rezoning every time. And let's not kid ourselves. The way zoning's working now, and I'm sure Rachel sees this, it's a major shift. You're now writing zoning districts for a specific property. If they own 120 acres, it's going to be 120 acres. If they're on a county trunk highway, it's going to be on a county trunk highway. And anybody else who wants to do it that doesn't meet those requirements, they got to write their own district. Am I making myself clear?
Yes.
That's a totally different concept, but it's because we can't use conditional uses.
And frankly, there are fewer sites, you know, available for a lot of things as land is getting developed. I think there's, you know, a couple factors that are driving that. And with livestock, your zoning code is already very specific, has some unique restrictions on how and where livestock can be used on lots. So I think we'd have to consider that as a basis too, and look at what within your ag districts now, your other ag districts, how is that treated, and then how would this be following suit or potentially different?
Okay. Yeah, that's the only comment. I think it's a good idea. I think it's something worth exploring. And I guess that's really the only concern that I had, really.
Mark, anything else? Joe?
Yeah. North of Indianapolis, about 100 miles, there is a huge operation up there. I realize that's not what we're talking about, but it's, I've gone by it a dozen times in my life. It's a dairy operation. They also have a restaurant. They also have a cheese plant. They also have a creamery. They have tours of that whole thing. Now, obviously, the scale of that is much bigger than whatever we're talking about because we don't have the land of that. But to get to John's point, we can't limit this. We need to define what agricultural use is. And my first question is, and I'm not as familiar with the zoning code as the rest of you are, and especially what Rachel and John are, where is agricultural use defined? Because we can't limit it to crops. I mean, somebody could come in here and buy 200 acres or have 200 acres, put in a large scale dairy operation. That's agricultural use. I mean, I milked enough cows in my life when I was a kid, and they decide that they want to have as an ancillary use for this thing, they want to have a creamery, they want to have tours, they want to have an ice cream store, they want to have a restaurant. And where does we have to be careful what we define as agricultural use, because there are things being farmed in Wisconsin as ag operations that aren't necessarily there 20 years ago. So I think that's one of the concerns I've got is we need to define exactly what agricultural use is and where, if we say it's 70% of whatever the land mass is, what is agriculture and what is non-agriculture that we're going to be governing. That's number one. Number two is I'm certainly in favor of other income sources on land. I have no problem whatsoever with this. I just want to make sure that, as others have voiced, we don't open Pandora's box here, and we have to have it defined at the same time narrowly enough so that we are consistent with our decisions back to a partitioner that's consistent with the last person that was in here before that. And that's what we get paid the big bucks for. I understand that. But we have to define what the heck agriculture is. If I buy 100 acres and I grow cannabis on a damn thing and I can do that legally, so then I can put up a smoke shop there as an ancillary use on the whole thing. I mean, it's legal, it's doing it. And what's different between that and having 1,200 head of Holstein cattle on a dairy operation? I want to put up an ice cream store. They're
Well,
both legal.
The difference, is because one of the few tools we have left legally in our quiver is rezoning.
Right.
We are not proposing pre-zoning anything.
Right.
When you come in with your 120 acres and you meet all the requirements, we'll think about whether we want to rezone you.
Right.
Because you have no right to a rezoning.
Right. I understand
You
that.
only have a right to do what your current zoning allows. No one's going to have this right unless they rezone to this new district.
Right. And it's a proactive thing. It's not, yeah, I understand that. A eminent attorney taught that into my head for 40 years. I understand it. But yeah, I just want to make sure when I think this is a great thing, I believe we should go forward with it. I just want to start, as Attorney Macy said, we need to get the big picture stuff taken care of. And I think the first thing is we need to make sure we've got a definitive definition of agricultural use.
For this district.
Right.
Right. That's assignment number one.
Right.
Rachel's on it.
Okay. Other than
She's
that,
already
I'm,
looking.
I'm,
Yeah, I was gonna say, your current zoning code defines agriculture incredibly broadly. So when I read this definition, I thought, yeah, that's pretty much every kind of farm I could think of.
I mean,
Me not being a
I don't want to
farmer, but-
regulate Susie's lemonade stand, and I don't want to open up Six Flags of America. It's the same conversation I had with the administrator earlier this week. We have to narrow this thing down somewhat, and I just want to make sure that somebody comes in and then somebody, well, that's not agricultural. Well, if this is the definition we're going to use, and I trust what you say is up there, I can't see it from over here. But the fact of the matter is we have to make sure that we're comfortable with this definition in this zoning district as proposed before we do anything else, because we need to know how big the box is before we start carving it up into pieces. So that's a long diatribe on my thoughts were, but that's where I'm coming from.
Anything else, Jeff? Ed?
I need to change my seating position. Okay, the obvious has been stated and been drilled down on in terms of zoning, what our current zoning codes say, and the concerns that have been raised by, obviously, everyone from Brian to Joe. So no need to repeat that. The question I had, and it's already indirectly been raised, as long as this was not, let's say, a cafe operation, you know, your large industrial farms, although economically wise, I can't see that happening in the town of Lisbon anymore. It's just not economically feasible for even those types of operations. My other comment or generalization was, given the fact that we're on exponential growth in the town right now, growth that I have not seen probably in 40 to 50 years, anything positive that within feasibility of our zoning codes that we can put into place to preserve some of the open land that we have left in the town of Lisbon, that, as we all on this commission know, when people come to talk to us, they're talking about a lifestyle and a reason they moved to the town of Lisbon. Okay, our rural character, if you will. And based on the exponential growth I'm seeing in subdivisions on the road I live on, which of course is Lake 5, that is quickly changing and changing faster than I, again, as I'm saying, have seen in 40 or 50 years. So bottom line, if we can preserve some open space in coordination with the county, with, of course, help from and information from Sandy Shear, with Rachel and Attorney Massey's input, as he is so eloquently done this evening, I would be in favor of moving forward with generally the proposal. And the specific concerns have been raised by Mark and other members of the commission. So I have no further comments.
Okay, thank you, Ed.
You're welcome.
Jeff?
Sure, save me for last.
Yeah, lucky you.
Actually, I'd like to take a little step backward. I'm not so sure it's a great concept. We currently sit at probably 92% residential in terms of our total value of our town. The homeowners are paying for everything, pretty much. I'd like to see greater balance in our tax base, particularly if we become a village, and see more industrial and commercial growth. Now, I don't know exactly where we're going to put these things. We'd have to, probably change our land use plan at some point in time to do that. That's one of the things that I've long been concerned with, that we're basically a bedroom community, and households are more expensive to take care of for a municipality than businesses. And what right now we are in a great position. I mean, in terms of the growth and whatnot, and we have a good tax rate comparatively to our neighbors, and I'd like to keep it that way. I think one of the ways to do that is to focus on more industrial and commercial growth. I love the idea of preserving open spaces and the rural nature of the town, but I don't know if this is going to accomplish that anyway. If there are like 3 or 4 identified sites in the entire town, that'd be it, I guess, you know. So that's my comment on that. I know I'm the only naysayer here with respect to moving forward, and I have no, objection to doing so. I just want to say that, there are other considerations than just getting into the nitty-gritty of this is the type of things we should be looking at here, stepping back and taking a more broader picture of the town as a whole. I do have a question. If we do create this zoning, will there be any land in the town that qualifies or would fall under that zoning once we create it?
Well, the vision here is it would be the Massey's land. They have 120 acres under contract, and that it's going to be written for them to be able to petition to rezone into this district. But we don't know of any others. And does anybody know of any holdings, 120 acre holdings that it's got to be under one ownership? I mean, there's going to be all these.
Right. And I guess what I'm saying is that, don't we run into, this is spot zoning? No, we don't have that problem.
Talk about that one.
Yeah.
Jeff, I think your point is a very good one. That's something I've been wanting to, I guess, periodically bring back to the commission, because we've talked about, we looked at the comprehensive plan earlier this year. And that, for that reason too, I included a lot of pages from that plan in your packets. And granted, it's due for an update. It's, it's aging a little bit and so on. And you'll have some new census data and the goals to incorporate and all of that. That's very much a question as to what will you do when you update your comprehensive plan. We talked about that a little bit at the beginning of this year with the commission. So really looking at that future land use map, I think, you have some language in your plan now that I think you can lean on that does suggest that ag preservation could be a good fit in certain places, like where appropriate. And so I really hope that all the commissioners are thinking about where on the map, like if this is a goal, where is it a goal? Where does it make sense? Where does it not? Can it coexist with that goal of diversifying your economic base and your tax base? That's a very important question. So I'm glad you raised that. I think some of the tracks we're looking at, there's a few places that I described in the town that could be a fit for this with large scale ag, may or may not be suitable for commercial or industrial development, especially up in the north end, but that's something for you all to consider. I mean, you've been here longer than me, certainly, so and these decisions can have really long-term impacts on the use of the land. So I guess I would just add that, I don't know that it's necessarily a conflict with that goal of diversifying the commercial side of things, but I like that you brought that into the mix.
Right. I agree with you. I'm not sure if necessary conflicts or is that mutually exclusive. Just the fact that I think that we can't lose sight of that as we move forward.
This is not a typical zoning district where we push people into it. They have to apply, and you have to decide if it's appropriate. But we don't envision that there would be master plan amendments necessary in most instances, because these areas have already been spelled out in the master plan for this potentiality. And I didn't want to slough over your spot zoning issue. Spot zoning isn't per se illegal. Spot zone, you have to have a reason for the spot zoning. If you need a gas station in this area, and you can have a one lot business, and we may have that in the few gas stations we have, and because they were legal non-conforming, and you wanted to make them legal, that wouldn't be illegal spot zoning to make them business zoning in the middle of, agricultural areas. So that's a great idea. This is the purpose tonight, is to move us one step further. And so we've got some homework here. As I understand it, all but one have with all having certain reservations, like the idea of a zoning district where the main goal is ag preservation. And traditional, we'll get that definition done. A large percentage would have to be for the traditional agricultural use. And you agree, does that, and everybody seem to agree that, sort of, because we can't use conditional uses anymore, you would rezone to this district, you'd have rights under this district, and we control it by the site plan of operations.
I have a couple questions. How long are we talking to do this? You said Richfield is still working on
Yes,
it? How
Rich-
long have they been
Oh, they've been
working
working
on
on
it?
it a long time. But that's also because they're in the middle of writing their rezoning code, and they're trying to put it into the zoning code or not put it into the rezoning code. They had petitions come in, they didn't buy those petitions.
Okay.
We've now been directed as a staff to write something and get it to the commission, and get it to the.
Okay, I just wondered how long we were looking.
That's your administrator's directive to us. I do not think she envisions this as being, as long as it takes for you to make the policy decisions, but, it's potential that at the next meeting, we'd be back with a draft of the zoning district.
Oh,
Correct.
Wow,
Correct.
okay.
This is not, we weren't putting a study committee together.
That's
This
correct.
is the study committee.
So the idea today was to go ahead and get your feedback, so then staff could sit down, write an ordinance that we think we heard you, and bring it back to you to see if any fine tuning is needed, things that you may have thought of that you want to bring up and either have as a potential allowable use, or you definitely want to write something in there that it is not allowed to be used. So we will do our best using what we've heard tonight and the last meeting, and then we'll bring that forward in August.
May I ask another question, please? In terms of land or open land, obviously thinking that the second largest holder of land in our town are our sand and gravel and quarry operations. Does this impact them at all?
Oh, it does not.
It does not.
It does not.
Not unless they change their final end plan to be agricultural
Yeah.
preservation
Yeah.
zoning district.
Yeah,
You know,
I'm
that's
thinking
what
they're
they
going to
have.
be lakes.
They have a plan on file, and they have money on file to make sure that plan becomes a reality, their restoration plan.
Well, the reason I'm asking is because I do know one of the places I've toured, Genesee Aggregate, does have somewhere in the dust bin of town of Lisbon history, has a plan to I'm missing the phrase, to put in subdivisions in one of their current sand and gravel operations that has been basically on mothballs for 40 or 50 years. It's south of Plainview, and it's Genesee Aggregate. So, and this has been mentioned down through the decades. Becky, are you aware of what I'm
Mhm.
saying? Okay.
So
Just,
remember, this zoning code that we will put together is only for people that ask for it. So it's not going to affect any other property owner. When a property owner comes and asks the plan commission, does an application, then brings it to the plan commission, then you can still do a site plan of operation review, make sure
Correct.
that it fits into that zoning and fits into what you envisioned that this zoning to work with that type of agricultural business.
all right.
So it's not going to affect what the quarries do when they are ready to no longer quarry them. Does that make sense?
Okay, Kathy. It's just, I wanted to ask because obviously they have been good corporate sponsors and supporters of our community, especially for our parks.
Absolutely.
I just a concern.
Yeah.
Thank you.
That's
So,
where I think we'd be leaning on your comprehensive plan as well. So if those areas are really planned long-term for ag, that already excludes the quarries. It's a different locations that you'd be looking at even entertaining this question of zoning and.
Well, I think I'll be long gone before summer housing in some of these places.
There you go.
Never know.
so in the packet, there's mention of research into similar or existing ordinances or zoning in other communities, as well as comments made by the community assistance planner. Are we going to have those before? I mean, there's information mentioned that we never got yet that we're going to, potentially next meeting, we're going to be asked to start making some, decisions. And I'd like to see that stuff before I sit down and.
Well, good luck. We looked in Richfield and we can't find anything. So if Rachel can find anything.
So
These
Well,
are-
if there isn't any, that's fine, but the planner's comments are known to somebody. We should
Yeah.
be able to get that.
So Sandy from the county has already reviewed some other types of businesses like this, and she gave us some comments. And what those comments were what Rachel used as well to help build her document that she gave you today. If you want to see exactly what, when we will work with Sandy on this, have her give us some feedback as well. And yes, you will see what Sandy has to say.
Yeah, I think there aren't a ton of examples, Mark, but I didn't want to get too far ahead of this either, and working, of course, in lockstep with Kathy and.
Yeah, no, I mean, I'm
so-
generally in favor of this. I mean, I'm sure it's gonna work out, but
Okay, so,
the information's mentioned but not provided. That's my only point.
good point. So, we're going down the right road, I guess, is what I'm hearing, and having the ag and preservation of ag is the main goal, and allowing supplemental income. I have one last question, and I know some people want to get to the game, so we don't have to answer this tonight, but would help us in drafting, is how, and this is just hard for me to ask, but because I don't know how to word it, not because, how tied does it have to be to agriculture? I mean, an event venue, do they gotta milk milk cows during the event in order to be or can they just be an event venue? Pardon?
I said I love city kids. I haven't seen a pig.
That was a slip. I'm sorry.
That was uncalled for.
Because we're gonna come back with a pretty broad list, I think. Knowing at the same time, it's all gonna be subject to not being a nuisance, not having the right setbacks, not being a noise problem. All of the safeguards that Rachel's commented will be in place. But we're gonna come back with a broad list, and I just wanted to tell you that. We don't have to go through it tonight, because I think in working on this all the period I've had, it gets really difficult to say how tied or what does it mean to be tied to the agricultural. And I just think that's a waste of time, in all due respect. If you're gonna let them have events, the bride doesn't have to,
Come in
milk
on
a
cow.
goat or, or come on a cow, they can just have weddings, for God's sakes. And it's just, somebody wants to have a rustic wedding and have it at Basie's, it doesn't have to be tied. And the restaurant doesn't have to serve only food, grown on the farm.
That's why we're thinking about 70, 80%, like, be the basis of the farm, so that would free up that other space to be.
That's why I'm concerned about how we define agriculture. Because I think, John, you raise a very good point as usual, but we've got to make sure that this isn't so broad, it covers everything from soup to nuts. And then this is so narrow that you can't get one to fit inside the other. But we don't want to micromanage this thing too. But if somebody, in my mind, if somebody wants to have an event center, venue, whatever you want to call it, and if that's what that is going to be and nothing else, then let them do a land division, have that rezoned if they can get through that process, and that's a business. Now we're out of the agricultural thing, and they can look out the front door of the barn and see a cow. I don't really care about that. But I don't think that we can have one size fits all and everything else and make this so broad that it's a shopping list from everything from A to Z.
We'll do our best to narrow it down to help get rid of the mud.
Okay, do you have enough
I think so.
guidelines, or, I mean,
Just double checking the notes here, and then thinking of the ag definition, I was thinking of whether or not I'd ask for more, Joe, on like if there's things that, like in your picture, like as you picture how this might go, as we define agriculture for the purpose of this district, thinking we'll probably narrow it down from the definition that's like
Yeah.
the big ag definition.
I
right?
assume that that's in the zoning, that's from the zoning code,
Yeah,
right?
for the
I'll-
definition,
I'll-
up front in the zoning code.
I will read that after tonight and see
Yeah.
what it says, because I can't see what that
I was
is.
thinking of reading it out loud. It is a little wordy, but it's really just including your crops, your
Yeah.
animals, machinery associated with it, but including growing of trees, things of that nature, plant nurseries, orchards.
Yep.
Truck
Okay.
farming. So it just gets specific, and my guess is that's in there because of the history with dealing with farms and making sure that everybody who's doing these
Yep.
things in Lisbon is covered by the definition of ag. So if there's anything that you think should be off the list, but that's something too, when we bring you a draft ordinance, I think we'll try to write it in a way that will make it easy. So in the meeting, we'd have the public hearing, of course, and then go through and say if there's specific language that you think needs to be struck out or modified. The next meeting, I imagine, would be something of a workshop session on that, really just comment on what you'd like the language or if you think it's going in the right direction.
But I've shared with you, my vision was not under the ag preservation 70%. You can have a truck farm and you can have a horse stable and you can have, a slaughterhouse. I mean, no, my vision was it's pretty narrow. If you want a truck farm, you can do that in
Right.
in the A10, or you don't need to have this district. This district is to allow them to do all these specialty uses, not as part of the 70%.
Right.
If that makes sense. I mean, if truck farming is already allowed somewhere else and they want truck farming, that's not what I envisioned. If they want to do a traditional ag, then just stay ag. This is to allow, and they don't necessarily, this is a little bit of a mini Disneyland in the middle of a 120 acre parcel. Let's not kid ourselves. And if that's the vision that you want to allow them to make money doing that, the staff is, we just wanted to make sure you don't have a problem with that. Subject to nuisance, subject to noise, subject to disturbing the neighborhood.
Yeah, the irony of this is that in the discussion is that most of our agricultural interests are the ones that are left in the town of Lisbon. The main thing is it's their bank, it's their asset, and they're selling their land. We've seen that in the subdivision we just approved with Twin Pines. So right now, the time and the effort, which is very important that we're putting on this, is kind of ironic considering where we are agriculturally in the town of Lisbon at this point. But I appreciate the effort and the thought.
Well, we have a property owner who's asked, and your administrator has said we directed staff to work with them and work with you to see if there could be a mutually agreeable use of this 120 acres.
No.
Fair enough?
Your position in
Yes.
the region is very unique, sorry. Just thinking like the metro area and where Lisbon is positioned, and you're just in a very unique position as far as being between very urban areas and very rural, and so that's naturally just an area that's in flux. Like land is changing, it's developing, like you said, Ed, and people are doing these things with their land and banking it, selling it. And I guess the question then is there a place for this type of use, which is really it's not quite your traditional ag. It's got that component, but it's more than that. But it's because your community is growing and because people want that interaction with farming. It's clear that there's this demand for it, and it's just kind of, I think, because of your position geographically, it's not surprising that it's come up, I guess, from my point of view.
Okay. Is that enough guidelines for you, or?
I think so. I think these questions will kind of just, if you would, just keep these in mind going into next month's meeting. And then you'll have more information. Certainly we'll bring more. We'll find some other examples and other things that will help with that discussion. These questions, if you think on that between now and next month, that would be really, I think, helpful to us. Yeah.
Okay, next on the agenda then is the planner report.
Yes. Oh, I have my list right in front of me, Elisa, but we're looking basically at a fairly busy agenda in August already. We've got the storage work site on Quarry Corners Parkway. They're coming in to do a build out for their phase 2, which would finish off the site. They were here a few years back and got approval. He's just looking to build the remaining buildings there, but that would involve a conditional use permit and the site plan of operation amendment.
And a major grading permit.
And a major grading permit, thank you.
So that's 2 public hearings.
The public hearings for one project, but that was not a conditional use back when it was last approved. That was since added to the ordinance, and so we want to get that on the books now that he's coming back to finish. We have also got the truck wash, potentially. I don't think it came into
Because at the June meeting, Quarry Corners Truck Wash was tabled to the August meeting rather than just being tabled, it must be brought back in August. We will have to do a continuation of the general use, conditional use permit, whether we want to or not, because it was tabled to a date certain. So we have to do that, even though they still have not provided the additional information that was asked for. So we have to schedule and hold the public hearing because they did not apply with additional information by the deadline. We will then have to adjourn that until they submit.
So that'll be on the agenda.
So we're currently looking at 6 public hearings in August.
The other one, which is interesting to the discussion we were just having, is the Meyer Wedding Barn. Some of you may remember that venue.
Yes.
Will be coming back. The owner is looking to go ahead with that project, so we'll be coming in. That's also a conditional use permit that will, excuse me, also be a public hearing.
Mhm.
We have this tourism, agribusiness type zoning district, I guess whatever we wind up calling it.
Which is a public hearing.
The public hearing is going to be the night of the hearing.
And moving the signing code from the zoning code into town code. And what Rachel and I spoke about today is leaving the sign code perfectly intact, not changing anything, just moving it and adding the caveat that additional relief could be sought and granted by either plan commission and or town board.
Okay. Making sure there's more
Right.
flexibility than is currently in there. That'd be the main.
We had a very long discussion today.
Yes.
There were other potential things in the hopper that did not come forward today, so.
I sure am sorry I'll miss it.
Well, that is what brings us to a question that we do need to run past all of you is we're looking at potentially a 4 to 5 hour meeting. So the, oh, and
Quick Trip on Highway Q also made a submittal today.
yes,
I
so
think that.
Q1 164 Quick Trip is applying for August as well. And as most of you, I'm sure, are well aware, that has a large potential for a large turnout to public hearings. So due to everything coming, are you willing and able to have it separated into 2 plan commission meetings in August so we're not here for 5 hours?
I would be in favor of that.
And if so, how does the 19th look?
Are we gonna have a quorum issue?
That's why we're asking now.
I will not be able to make the 5th, but I can make the 19th. Or any other.
It is a Thursday. It is 2 weeks after.
I mean, can we, not to further muddy the waters for staff, is it possible that we could delay this Agra, whatever the heck we're calling it, till September or something? I don't want to, I know that there's a concern where somebody wants to get going on this, but this is a big chunk of thing that we're going to need some discussion on, and to compound that with a half dozen public hearings and everything else.
I think that may be a question for Attorney Macy. So if we are looking at potentially adding a section to the zoning code with creating a new district, does the public hearing need to be held when they're looking at a draft? Or does it need to only be held when they're ready to adopt? And I don't know the
You have to have a pretty
answer.
final form for the public to look at before you give notice of the public hearing. So we wouldn't go with a rough draft and give public notice. We'd have to be pretty, this is what the plan commission is recommending and can
Okay.
live with. Now we're looking for, public comment on the same. But I want to go back to whether we have a quorum. Kathy, we have an issue as to whether we have a quorum on the regular plan commission. At least
We will have a quorum on the 5th. We're only missing 2 on the 5th.
Okay.
We just
And
need to
for
verify.
those 2 people, and when, Rachel, when you schedule these, if we adjourn, if you weren't here at the public hearing, you're not participating. So don't hold all the public hearings on the 5th and then expect action on them all, because those 2 who weren't here at the public hearings won't be participating on the other meeting either.
So,
Well,
Pardon? They can't participate if they weren't at the public hearing.
no, the thought was just hold the Quick Trip public hearing and items at their own separate meeting on the 19th. Have everything else, the public hearings and action on the regular night on the 5th.
So were there people that couldn't make the 19th? I'm sorry, I walked out. I thought her report was gonna be really long.
I can, excuse me, I can make both meetings.
Okay.
So-
Jeff?
Jeff,
I should be able to make both.
and no for the first one. What about the 19th?
I can make the 19th.
Okay,
Okay,
Mark?
No on the 5th, yes on the 19th.
okay.
I can make the 5th, but I'll have to double check because my daughter gets married on the 21st.
Well, you
And
wanna
I
be
don't
here.
think, and I don't, and I don't think,
You wanna be
You're not
here.
gonna be here, come on.
I
You're gonna be
don't,
here
What an
all day.
I don't think
Excuse.
anything happens on Thursday,
Sorry,
but
dear.
if it does, I'm sure she'd understand.
Oh, yeah, I'm sure.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, right.
I
Yeah.
think I can make the 19th, but I would like to double check.
And Becky?
I think I can be here for both.
Excellent. Okay, then we shouldn't have any problem on the 19th.
Wonderful. Thank you all.
The question was posed if we should move the agribusiness.
Well, why don't we move the agribusiness to the 19th, and if, God forbid, we get through the Quick Trip in a timely manner, so we can spend time.
Yeah, good luck with that.
No one's gonna
Yeah.
show up here
Yeah.
for that.
Could I move that we, would Quick Trip provide sandwiches for the 19th? I think that's a conflict of interest.
Yes, that would be nice.
Chicken sandwich.
Okay, Rachel, was there anything else on your report or no?
No, it's just that there's, we see a wave of.
Sleep is overrated.
And underappreciated.
All right, then I'm looking for a motion to adjourn.
So move.
Second.
Okay, the motion has been made and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
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 All opposed? Okay, we have adjourned at
I've got 7:53.
7:53.